right?
Yeah, well, the human resources and equity people at the University of Toronto have made mandatory unconscious racism training, anti-bias training, and they've made it mandatory for their staff. And I found that absolutely appalling. First of all, it's political re-education.
So when you say mandatory, like this is something that you had engaged in?
No, I didn't have to, because I'm not part of the human resources staff.
Okay.
But the people that they're consulting with to implement these sorts of programs certainly have faculty and students in their sites. I mean, these are trial runs for much broader rolling out of exactly this sort of re-education
What's
process.
the methodology behind it, and how's this been vetted?
Oh, I don't think it's been vetted at all. Like, if you're going to, let's say you want to put into practice an educational process, what you need to do is you need to measure the initial state validly, so that your measure, so you need to use multiple measures, and all those measures need to say the same thing. So if you're going to accuse someone of racism, you need several different measures of racism, and then you have to show that across all the measures, it's like using different meters. All the meters should read the same thing. Then you have to implement your educational intervention, carefully defined. Then you have to see afterwards if the consequence of the educational effort was a reduction in those initial indices, those initial measures. That sort of thing, when it's been done at all, has showed that educational interventions of that sort that are mandatory actually make racism and bias worse rather than better. But why let a few facts stop you? Because we already know from the postmodernists that there's no such thing as facts anyways.
So there's...
Look, in Canada, here's
Please.
something. This is one of the things that really makes me proud of my country. Our government has now announced that the judiciary in Canada will be selected. If you're going to be a candidate to be a judge, you have to produce a dossier that specifies your identities, whatever they happen to be, racial, ethnic, religious. And then the committee that's going to appoint you to the judiciary has to have undergone mandatory anti-racism and bias training before they're allowed to serve on the committee. So basically, we've set up a situation in Canada where the people who select our judges have to go a kind of indoctrination that has no validity from a scientific perspective before they're allowed to select our judges.
Now, who's enforcing this? Where did
The
this come
Justice
from?
Minister.
But
the Federal Justice Minister.
Where did this program come from?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, there's all sorts of people who are offering these programs now.
And so
it's become a growth industry.
But what is their qualifications? That's a good question, right? None.
Qualifications.
Zero.
Yeah,
huh?
yeah.
The eyebrows are raised.
Yeah, well, there's no way of having qualifications for
Right.
doing this sort of thing because it's not a valid procedure.
So how do
people
they
who claim to be qualified. And
So they claim to be qualified. They come to the university and they say, I have a solution. The university
Yeah.
says, finally, just run with it. And
That's
they just
exactly right.
implement it because to question anything that would absolve racism is racist.
Yes, right. Yes, and they did that in collaboration with the Black Liberation Collective, which is...
Explain that one, because that one's adorable. The Black Liberation Collective, isn't that the group that somehow thinks that white people are inferior because they don't have enough melanin?
Yeah,
so they
it was
don't
started by a woman who said exactly that. She's a black supremacist, and she said that the reason that white people are inferior is because they don't have enough melanin in their skin, and melanin apparently is this agent. It's obviously a pigment, but it's apparently this agent that transforms cosmic energy into wisdom. I mean, she's completely. You can make up your own mind about her, and then the other person who started the Black Liberation Collective is a woman who used to work for the University of Toronto Students' Union, who is now being pursued by that students' union for embezzling $300,000 from that organization with the help of a couple of her cronies.
Well, why let a few facts stand in the way of abolishing racism?
Yeah, well, they also
university?
are perfectly willing to promote violent means of social transformation, and the university claims that it's in favor of safety. You know, because they've gone after me because my refusal to use compelled pronouns has apparently made the campus unsafe. But they're perfectly willing to take advice from the Black Liberation Collective, and not only are they willing to take advice from them and not disavow them despite their support for violent means of social revolution, they're also pushing equality of outcome on their employees. And the people who taught their mandatory anti-racism and anti-bias training program said outright in their training material, which I have copies of, that any institution that doesn't have equality of outcome as part of its characteristic at every level of the power organization is corrupt and should be restructured. But that pales in comparison to my refusal to use compelled pronouns, obviously.
I just don't understand how this gets so far. I just don't understand how no one has, there's no rational thinking involved in the administration and the people that are implementing these ideas. I just don't understand how it gets to the point where...
things get to terrible places one tiny step at a time. You know, if I encroach on you and I'm sophisticated about it, I'm going to encroach 2 millimeters. I'm going to encroach right to the point where you start to protest. Then I'm going to stop. Then I'm going to wait. Then you're going to calm down. Then I'm going to encroach again right to the point where you protest. Then I'm going to stop. Then I'm going to wait. And I'm just going to do that forever. And before you know it, you're going to be back 3 miles from where you started, and you'll have done it one step at a time. And then you'll go, oh, how'd I get here? And the answer was, well, I pushed you a little farther than you should have gone, and you agreed. And so then I pushed you a little farther than you should